Voy a aprovechar una de las cosas que ha comentado Juanje, que me ha parecido muy interesante en la presentación, pero me ha llamado la atención lo que hablabas de la madurez, ¿no? Es una de las cosas que nos interesa hacer es evaluar la madurez de nuestras iniciativas para ver en qué puntos podemos avanzar, y también evaluar la madurez del conjunto de las universidades sería muy útil, como ha dicho, pues porque podemos encontrar con quién colaborar o en qué cosas podemos mejorar. Entonces, ese es un tema del que nos va a hablar especialmente Elsa Cardoso, que ella tiene un currículum académico vinculado con temas de inteligencia institucional o de BI. Lidera la Task Force de Business Intelligence en EUNIS, en la Asociación de Sistemas de Información Universitaria Europea. Y como también ha comentado Juanje, pues desde ahí se han hecho estudios de madurez de BI. El caso español, en su momento, hubo muy pocas respuestas, efectivamente, y bueno, lo que esperamos también es que en un plazo breve pues podamos hacer una reedición de ese estudio, que podamos hacer un nuevo cuestionario y que tengamos realmente una respuesta pues eso, más amplia, que nos pueda ser útiles a todos, ¿no? A tanto a los que respondamos como a la gente que pueda ver un poco cómo están las cosas. Así que, pues sin más introducción, Elsa will speak in English. Her talk, I am sure, will be very encouraging, and I hope it will be understood by everyone.
Okay, so good morning. Sorry that I have to speak in English, but I understand Spanish, but I could not speak as fluent as I speak in English. So I'm now bringing you a different, very much aligned with the previous presentation, but we're going to talk now about the key success factors to start a BI initiative. So in terms of the agenda, I will first talk a little bit about the EUNIS organization and the task force that we have, which is specifically related to business intelligence. And, well, I think this was a challenge, this presentation, to talk about the key factors to improve, the key success factors, and how to improve the maturity of, well, how you call it here in Spain, institutional intelligence in higher education. So in terms of the way that I approach this, I decided to go back to the definitions. And you will see that there is a lot of confusion in terms of terminology. So Juan has just spoke a little bit about how you, in the higher education sector, started using the term institutional intelligence. But I will give you a larger overview of the different terms that we have. So a little bit about me. I'm an assistant professor at University Institute of Lisbon. I teach business intelligence and data warehouse, performance management. That's what I do normally. I'm also a researcher at INESC-ID, a research group in Lisbon. I'm the program director of a master program in BI, just integrated decision support systems. And I'm the task force leader of the BI task force of EUNIS. So EUNIS is the European University Information Systems Organization, which is around for more than 20 years. We currently have 4 task forces operating, the one in benchmarking, which should be somehow very interesting to you as well, because it benchmarks the IT departments of higher education across the world, and they also do surveys, so it's something that you can also be useful to critique. The BI task force, the e-learning, also very active, and interoperability. So the goal of this organization is really to promote the creation of European collaboration between different institutions, and that's what we've been doing. We have an annual congress, and in terms of the task force, of the BI task force, we started in 2013, the BI maturity survey that ran in 9 countries. And probably some of you were present in the meeting in November, where I also talked about that survey. So in 2014, we did a Paris conference with 70 participants from 15 countries. And we did a lot of local meetings in Dublin, also a presentation at the Terrena conference in November here in Spain, in Barcelona, and the Congress. And so here are some pictures, as some of them saw in Paris, the local meeting, which was a meeting with 3 Irish universities, and it was very much a workshop and about training and about and explaining how to do it. And it was very interesting because we had institutional research persons, so we had the users, and we also had the IT responsibles, so IT directors. So it's very much interesting to start making the two worlds communicating. So this is some view of the Congress. We also had, I put this picture just to show Juan. So you see OCU and the model, and Aaron Waltz, which was also part of the development of the model that Juan just spoke about. So he presented this exercise of running the maturity model across the American universities. And last November, some of you are here today as well. And so for this year, what we are doing now is preparing everything to run again another survey for the maturity, because the results that we got in the first survey were not so relevant, and we will get there a little bit later. So we are here today, and thank you for inviting me again to speak to your community. I'm also doing an event in July in Portugal. We're trying to raise the same awareness that you've been doing here in Spain at the same level, at the level of our crew. And we hope that we still this year can do another BI conference, European, in Paris, because that's where we have a lot of sponsors, and so that we can again get the community together. So going now to the point of the key definitions. So I presented this slide in November. So the BI landscape. We have really a lot of terms. What I did now is, let's see a timeline, the BI landscape timeline. So you see that when we discuss these kind of systems, we see that there's really a big confusion, because the market keeps changing and keeps changing the names that we use. The overall goal is really performance management. We want to ensure the performance, and we want to manage and measure the performance of our organization. Being a university or not, we need to manage it. So we know that since we always have had decision support systems and data mining being used. Then in the 90s, we started developing data warehouses. And then later on, in the mid-90s, the term BI was introduced into the market by Gartner Group. So we actually continue doing the same thing, but we call it data warehouse/BI systems. And the data visualization part is really very important when we do these systems, as we will see it. Now we are here, and Juan spoke a little bit about this. Now we are talking about advanced analytics and big data analytics. And you're going to see that there is an evolution. So we're going to see how these things are interconnected. So in terms of performance management, look, it's not if you go back to definitions, they are not very different about what Juan has just presented. So it's about the processes that we have in our organization, the methodologies and the technologies that we use to monitor, analyze, and plan the business performance. I know that in higher education, or higher ed for short, there is a problem of seeing a higher education institute as a business, but it is a business. We can apply a business model to the profit world or to the non-profit world. It's just a matter, for me, I don't have a problem with the business word, but I do understand that some some stakeholders, some academic stakeholders do have a problem with this. And that's why probably you change it from business intelligence to institutional intelligence. Probably because you do have a problem here in Spain, even more. But because in the States, we call it business intelligence. So we don't call it institutional intelligence. But again, this is just a word. It's just words. The key part of this, the first part of the presentation is just words. So whatever you use it, understand it, what are you using and why are you using it. So the goal of performance management is very much aligned with quality management. And so the goal is to measure in order to manage, in order to improve. So it's a positive management thinking. We want to be as proactive as possible, and the goal is to improve. So that's what we want to do. So this can be applied to a university or to a company. It really doesn't matter. So I'm going to start in the middle with DWBI systems. So the term BI, as I said, was introduced into the market in mid-90s by the Gartner Group, and they define it as such: a broad category of applications and technologies for gathering, storing, analyzing, sharing, and providing access to data to help enterprise users make better business decisions. So the same, exactly the same as we heard. So the key points is that when we talk about a PI system, it should be linked to specific organizational goals. You should be able to determine why you are going to develop the system, in which way you are going to improve real outcomes of your organization. And also, data visualization is a key component. I was very keen on seeing the data visualization that Juan just shown, and this is a big part, and it's huge at the moment because we have done a lot of BI systems, but now we are concentrating more on the data visualization techniques, and there are a lot of good practices. But how has this started? So let's go to the origin of the timeline. So decision support systems, it's orange. We have this field, this research field, since the 70s. It started with executive information systems and the decision support systems. So, but by then we had the technological power that we had cannot be compared to what we have today. So but we still have researchers continuing working and doing this kind of systems and calling it decision support systems. So it can be seen, DSS can be seen as an umbrella term for the whole system or just an application, a small specific application. The basic definition is a computer-based information system to provide interactive information support to the decision-making process of managers and business users. So it's the same. Institutional intelligence, the same. The key points is that a decision support system, if you're doing that to support a decision, it should be interactive, it should be quick, and it should be able to reach different users in different ways the way they need it. Okay, so what about classification of a DSS? This is very well established, and it's used for also this special interest group on decision support, knowledge and data management systems. So we know that we have communication-driven DSS, data-driven, document-driven, knowledge-driven, model-driven. So this is a classification of the different DSS, decision support systems that we have. So BI, when we are dealing with a BI, a data warehouse BI system, we are talking about a data-driven DSS. So where the dominant component is a database, and what the emphasis, what we've been talking about, capturing the data, cleaning it, integrating, storage, retrieval, and then retrieval with data visualization techniques. But we're talking about structured data. That's the key thing. When we're talking about data mining, we're talking about knowledge-driven DSS. It has been done for years that we've been doing this. Of course, now, as Juan has mentioned, there is a more emphasis now at applying these techniques. There is again a new wave of going back to machine learning and data mining techniques and apply it to the huge amount of data that we have. But the algorithms are there. So I'm not going to talk about the other ones, the communications and the document-driven, because they are DSS, because they are more old, because we already do this. See, these are a lot of decades ago. And we already communicate like this, interactive. So what we are interested in saying that, okay, when we're talking about data warehouse and BI systems, we are focused on data-driven DSS. And data mining and all the artificial intelligence-based DSS are knowledge-driven DSS. So when we're talking about these predictive models that we are now talking, and Juan has just also mentioned it, predictive analytics, we are focused on model-driven DSS. We have for years developed this kind of models in terms of not in higher education because it was not possible, but for instance, the churn models is the same. The churn model is used in telecommunications, is a model of the risk of abandon of a student or the risk of abandon of a client. So we have been doing these kind of models for a lot of years. So I'm going to describe data warehouse and data warehouse BI systems all together. So let's see, what is a data warehouse? And I'm very, very curious about the data in Spain. So if 90% of universities have a data warehouse, I wonder, what do you classify as a data warehouse? And this is the first question that I would like you to think about. So if we just say yes or no, I'm going to have like 15 slides to explain a data warehouse. And so a data warehouse is an integrated repository, and by the end, I will ask you to raise your arm if you really have a data warehouse, okay? Let's make this test. Let's make this more interactive. So data warehouse is an integrated repository developed, well, we do it by moving data from different data sources. We have different areas here, different data sources. Okay, data warehouse BI system. Okay, so we have this integrated repository, but then we need to extract the data, make it into relevant information for the business users. So we apply data visualization techniques, and by the way, there are a lot of good practices to develop dashboards, such as this one, so that we can, at a glance, take a look at the dashboard, the screen, and understand what is going wrong, and decide, because we need that the dashboard is done for a particular decision maker, for a person who needs to take some decisions and therefore needs some data. So the thing is that sometimes I see dashboards done because it's possible. Who is the person who's going to look at the dashboard? It doesn't work like that. A dashboard is, you need to look at the decision-making person and ask, what do you do normally? What do you need to act upon? And then you design, using data visualization, the right set of graphics, the right set of ensemble to give that the right tool to decide. That's a really valuable dashboard. So, how do you develop a data warehouse? You need a methodology and you need a technical architecture. So, technical architecture. Basically, there's 4 layers. You have data sources, you have the ETL system, which used to be called data staging area. You have the enterprise data warehouse, and we have the BI applications, which used to be called end user data access. That's why before the term business intelligence, we had data warehousing, and it encompassed all of these. The architecture is the same, the technical architecture is the same. So when the market introduced the term BI, so now we say, okay, we have a data warehouse / BI system, and the data warehouse is the infrastructure, the platform that enables us to develop BI applications. So the last layer. So, but the question is, what about this? How do you develop an enterprise data warehouse? You have to choose an architecture. And to choose an architecture, there are three main architectures. I put this here because I see the two guys that proposed this architecture as, well, they've been fighting for a lot of decades. And they've reached somehow a deadlock, that's why they are like that, but I see that they're totally different approaches. We have the hub and spoke architecture, or the corporate information factory, CIF, which is advocated by Bill Limnan. He's a data person, so we started with the data. So we have, if you do that, you have a centralized data warehouse with dependent data marts. That's one approach to do it. If you answer in your questionnaire, you have a data warehouse, do you have a centralized data warehouse or not? Another approach, Kimball, is more focused on more, I call it, he always had an agile thinking. So you should develop by iterations, focused on the users first. So you develop a data mart bus architecture with linked dimensional data marts. That's Kimball. And you have the third one, standalone data marts. The only one that gives you an enterprise data warehouse are the first two. This is just, you are just perpetuating the silos of information, of data. So, standalone data marts, you go quickly, but you have a narrow view that serves the interests of specific users from each subject area, but it's not integrated. So you don't have a data warehouse. So the first thing for you to answer yes to a data warehouse, is it integrated, or is it an attempt like this? Second, if you follow Kimball's approach, you will have a conceptual enterprise data warehouse, because if you zoom in here, you will see different data marts linked by the conformed dimensions and facts. So you have an enterprise data warehouse with the different subject areas and different users from different areas of your university. If you go with Imnen's approach, well, before you serve the users with something, you need to integrate the different source systems, and you have an integrated repository of atomic data in a normalized format. And then you summarize and aggregate and give it just a specialized view for financial, for human research, for academic information. So, but first you need to construct this. So the question is, do you have a data warehouse with these 4 layers? This is the technical architecture, again from Kimball, just a little bit more polished, the picture. And here you see you also have to use the metadata. You need this, and metadata and infrastructure and security are also very important of the technical architecture. So raise your hand if you really have a data warehouse. 1, 2, the same? So we'll check that 90%. To be checked, no worries. We deal with data, we can improve. We measure to manage to improve. So that's it. Okay, so what about the methodology? So you need to choose the methodologies to develop. That's the architecture. Then the methodology. You need to have, well, I always think that for university sector, the Kimball's approach and the Kimball architecture is much easier because it's iterative. We don't have a lot. We're not in telecommunications, we're not a bank, so we don't have the resources that they have. So we have little funding, and we have to go by little steps. So Kimball is the right methodology to do so. You see, there are a lot of components, a lot of activities. We don't have time to go to all of them. But you see, it has been around since the 1990s, because Kimball is retiring next year. But he was a very successful consultant in the United States, and he's been developing also in the university since the 90s. And we have these 2 books. One was edited of best practice. Where are you? Of best practices of the methodologies to develop data warehousing. You have one which was edited in 1998, and then 10 years later, we have the second version. It's a very updated version of the book, because it's 10 years now with more best practices on how to do. You have a guideline on how to do all of these activities. And by the way, you have to do them all, really, to get a running and sustainable data warehouse. But nowadays, we also have this some agile methodologies that I've been working with. They are very, very interesting, because for us, it's particularly in higher education, because they bridge the gap of communication between the managers and the IT department. So it's very good. So you have this methodology developed by Lawrence Core, which was a former collaborator of Ralph Kimball, And and it's very interesting, it's very agile. He has a term called model storming, which is data modeling with brainstorming. And in the same room, we have a data model, which is the facilitator of the workshop. I've done that in my university. And you have the developers, and you have the BI stakeholders. And by then, by the end of the session, you will get something that Juan has mentioned, a plan, a development plan with the priorities of all the development. And this is something that you can do in half a day. It's very productive because you set the expectations, not only from the IT department, but also for the users. And you buy in the users right from the start. This is very useful. Another thing that's useful is that, I don't know, some of you might know the business model canvas to model a business. And he applied that, Lawrence applied that to BI. So you have a documentation in terms of your dimensional model of each data mart in a way that the business users can very easily understand, but in a way that also the developers can be aligned, very straight on. So it's very, very easy to use, it very, very interesting. I'll leave it there for you. So there you go. You have you have a methodology, you need a methodologist, and you need an architecture. So what about advanced analytics? Why do we need something more? Well, because we don't only have structured data. We have a lot of new data coming in. And Juan has talked about the RFID tags. It depends. This trend has not really extended to higher education yet, because we are a little bit behind. But I'm sure that I've seen that in Spain, on contrary that in Portugal, you are very active on Twitter, and you are very active on social networks. So maybe you do have more data of this kind of types that we, for instance, have in Portugal. So what about defining analytics? Why do we need another term? Well, look at the definition of the TDWI, which is the Data Warehouse Institute. Analytics requires the ability to collect, manage, analyze, and act on ever-increasing amounts of disparate data at the right speed and within the right time frame. It includes methodologies for development as well as technologies. It's the same. It's exactly the same. The only thing that is different is now we are focused on different kinds of data, different data formats. We must understand that we live in a world where there has markets, vendors, companies, and they need to continue innovating in order to generate more business value for them. But as long as we are educated, as long as we are educated about what we are talking about, it's okay. So in terms of defining analytics, now the new take on analytics by TDWI is that it encompasses, so it includes traditional BI, as we've just seen, and advanced analytics. So advanced analytics provides algorithms for complex analysis of structured or unstructured data. It uses sophisticated statistical models, machine learning, and other advanced techniques to find patterns in data for prediction and decision optimization. Well, going back to decision support systems, these are the model-driven decision support systems that artificial intelligence people have been talking about for many, many, many years. So we have the predictive analytics, but now we have a catchy term, predictive analytics. So with the goal, we say, okay, now we need to be more proactive. Imagine when you have a report and when you receive a report, all you can do is be reactive. It already happened. So we want to change this way of managing. And there are a lot of popular techniques used, decision trees, regression, clustering. So this is what we do in predictive analytics. I always use the Davenport definition of analytics because it's a very interesting and broad definition. So you see that it's about putting analytics to work, it's about improving performance. Again, it's about performance management. So in the idea, if you want to be analytic, and Juan talked about the analytical culture, and that's very important to cultivate, you need to combine analytics, analysis, different kinds of analytics and analysis and models and techniques with data, and a systematic thinking or reasoning to make decisions. So you have three things. For that, you need training. You really need training because you need techniques, you need the data, but you also need a mind that is curious and that really keeps trying to understand things. That's what he means by systematic reasoning to make decisions. I adapted this. So we see that we have two axes. We have information and then insight. When we are on data warehouse, when we're doing data warehouse systems, are you happy with just receiving reports? Or do you want some alerts to say what is going on, so to give you a little bit of time to be proactive? So what will happen is just extrapolation for the future. It's just extrapolation based on information that you already have. But we want more. At this time, we want more. So we want to gain a greater insight into what is happening. And so you need to apply different techniques. Modeling, experimental design. How and why did this happen? Explain. The present. What is my next best action? We need recommendation systems. And for the future, okay, then prediction, optimization, simulation. But we can do this only if we have the infrastructure, only if we have the data integrated, consolidated, and with quality. So what about big data analytics? Okay, very, very quickly. So big data, okay, the 3 V's or the 4 V's. You have high volume, high velocity, and high variety of information assets. The 4th V is normally called value. You need all of these, but that data that brings value to the organization. And we actually need new forms of processing this data. And then it came, well, because we needed a different infrastructure, the Hadoop system was created as an open source system to give us the storage architecture and to be able to process this different type of data. So how is Hadoop today? Hadoop is evolving extremely, very, very, very rapidly. Since 2013, it has evolved a lot because we've seen that commercial firms have also taken this, have done some implementations of Hadoop, and by then, well, things are really, really strange, changing, not strange, changing. But still, there are a lot of applications, not just the MapReduce algorithm, but it's still very immature. So we will see more developments on this in the couple of months. The idea here is the takeout of this in terms of big data is the following. It will not replace your data warehouse. It will complement. And I just used here, I need to apologize for having names here of products, but it's just a representation. So you have, the sources, the first layer, you have the ETL here, and then your data system, you have your enterprise data warehouse here, and you have your BI applications. So again, the same thing. What you have now, what you add if you need to do a big data analytics, what you have is another system where you store this new data, textual data, non-structured data, whatever. You analyze it in real time, and not all of this data needs to go into the data warehouse. You analyze and you explore it, and you give the opportunity to explore. Are we there yet for higher education? I don't think so. Not yet. Not yet. So what about maturity? So now we can talk about maturity, now that we know the concepts. So I went to the dictionary, maturity. Maturity is the quality or state of being mature. So it relates to full development. Full development. So it's, okay, we normally measure maturity using maturity models that normally have a set of dimensions where we evaluate our performance, and then we have a sequence of levels or stages where we characterize our maturity. We should take on this, we should use maturity models as a self-assessment tool. Again, with that quality management thinking, I will measure myself to manage to improve. So if we do that, it can be a very powerful instrument in your institution to understand where you are not performing so well. So in terms of BI-specific maturity models, there are more than 10. But in higher ed, Juan spoke about the OCU maturity model developed for the higher education sector. In our survey, we used the TDWI maturity model, which is used across all sectors, including education, and the OCU maturity model. So, but looking now at the TDWI maturity model, we see an evolution as well. So we see that this maturity model that we used in the survey in 2013 was called TDWI maturity model, and now it's called TDWI BI maturity model, because in 2013-14, they issued the TDWI big data maturity model, very catchy. And then 1 year later, we have the TDWI analytics maturity model. Okay, too many models, right? Too many models. So you see that analytics, and then here, so this current year, 2014-2015. So analytics is BI, traditional BI, plus advanced analytics. Okay, so going back to BI, we have 8 dimensions and 5 stages of maturity. This is what I presented last November. We have the 5 stages, non-existent, preliminary, repeatable, managed, optimized, and then we have 8 dimensions: scope, sponsorship, funding, value, architecture, data, development, delivery. Okay. Scope, the scope of your program. How extensive is your program in terms of your organization and in terms of the different areas? Sponsorship. How many sponsors do you have? You should have more than one for your project. Funding. How much do you have a specific budget articulated for your BI program, or as an IT director you have a whole budget but you don't assign a specific budget for your IT, for your BI initiative? Value. How effectively does your solution meet the business needs and expectations, real expectations? How do you manage to have new students, attract new students, because your system can lead you to attract the better students, the better performance students, the ones that will pay the tuition, perform well, finish the course, finish the courses and the programs so that you can have success, academic success, and also pay the tuitions. Value, real outcomes. Architecture, so we have spoken about architecture. How advanced is your architecture? Do you really adhere to the standards that we have of the industry? Because this is an industry. And if we are doing data warehouse in banking and in healthcare and in telecommunications, there are best practices for doing data warehouse. And higher education should use those best practices. Data. To what degree does the data provided by the BI data environment meet business requirements? So you have clean data, but it doesn't really reflect the needs of your institutional research. How do you call it here? It's not institutional research, it's institutional planning. But the Office for Quality and Planning sometimes is also called institutional research part. So development, how effective is your BI development team approach to managing projects and developer solutions? How long does it take to develop a new data mart, a new subject area? How many projects do you have running at the same time? How many people do you have in your team? Delivery, outline our reporting analysis, capabilities with user requirements, and what is the extent of usage. Delivery is really who is using it. Who is really using it? So you develop everything, and in the end, this is done for the users. Are they using it? Okay, full development, maturity. So we see, and then we've talked about this in November, and you have all this information already. How do you calculate? You have a lot of questions, and then you score yourself, and then you have a final view on where you are. So you see that if you happen to be in the first level, non-existent, you actually have operational reporting, some spread marts, which are isolated spreadsheets or reported. They're not talking. Standalone data marts, no, okay? It's not a data warehouse. When you go to the preliminary level, you have your first attempt to really start doing a data warehouse BI system, but still with a very narrow scope. Sorry. If you go to the repeatable level, then you start using, you have a consolidated set of data marts, and you have a BI program installed. You have a BI program manager and program and project management. If you go to the managed level, then you have a unified data warehouse architecture, fully loaded data warehouse with all the data, all the areas in your university, and you can start using predictive analytics, and optimizes the last level. So here you have this, I'm going to skip because we are running late, so you have more details about the characteristics of each of the level. So when we see now the new trend, so the analytics maturity model, they reduce the number of dimensions. Now you have 5 dimensions: organization, infrastructure, data management, analytics, and governance. And the stages are the same, 5. It's the same. Pre-adoption, early adoption, corporate adoption, mature, visionary. So organization deals with, to the extent, to the organizational strategy, culture, leadership, skills, and funding to support a successful analytics program. And it needs to be widespread, and it needs to be used every day for the decisions. So infrastructure, it's about the underlying the architecture that you have to support all of these initiatives. And the technologies, we cover that in terms of the methodologies and the architecture. Data management. Well, data management it relates to the data management practices in terms of how do we take care of the data and the different variety, volume, and velocity. Putting a little bit of hint of big data here, okay? So we need to take care of data quality and processing and integration procedures in order to have the data actionable for decisions. And then analytics. What kind of analytics are you using? And it also includes the analytic cultures, the analytic culture that Juan discussed previously. Again, you should be able to demonstrate how analytics contributes to the decision made throughout the organization, not just one sector, not just the higher level. So spread. So if you are trying to measure the maturity, your development in terms of this dimension. And finally, governance, which relates to data governance. Do you have a data governance strategy? Do you have a data steward? Do you have standards in your organization? Or projects are done isolated? So, so here you have this view of the analytics maturity assessment criteria. I'm not going to go into details here, but you have this online, and by the end I will put some references so that it will be easier, and links so that it will be easier for you to assess this information. So what about the big data maturity model? We're not even going to consider it. So it's, apart from the colors, they are really the same. You see the same, it has only this part. So it's actually, I don't think this was a very successful maturity model because it was, well, 1 year later, you have the analytics maturity model, okay? So what about the survey? So you already know this. We run this survey in 9 countries. Well, unfortunately, the response rate from Spain was very, very low, and I'm feeling very optimistic now that in the next run, it will be completely different. We addressed in the different countries the questionnaire to IT directors or BI managers or director level. We used the 2 maturity models, and so global response 66 in 9 countries was very, very, very low. In terms of the representation of the public higher education institutions, it's mostly represented by public, this sample. And see, you only have 6 from Spain. So from the representation of universities present here today, I think that if we run this year, it will be completely different. So we will go very quickly by this because I want to talk more 5 minutes on something else. I need to go a little bit faster, and you already seen this. But what we have seen is that the maturity in terms in Europe, it's first, let's put this, it's a blur picture. Okay, it's really a blur picture because people either, let's say it positively, they didn't want to look bad in the picture. So in terms of the dimensions, look. Now that we have discussed all of these dimensions, this does not make sense. If you're struggling with funding, architecture, data, and development, how can value be the most rated dimension, the most mature dimension? It doesn't make sense. And it's not in a specific country, it's across all countries. So value is really overrated. So what people were answering was expected value, not real value. And so what we did was now study a little bit more about these 4 most underperforming dimensions: funding, architecture, data, and development. That's why I took so much interest in explaining the architecture and the methodology, because this is very much linked with the critical success factors. And we know that from what we know from the literature is that these are the 4 main critical success factors: weak sponsorship, management, and management support, insufficient funding, inadequate user involvement, and organizational politics. But let's go deeper. Let's go deeper. So you want to start your BI initiative, right? Or give it a push. So I'm presenting in some just food for thoughts, okay? Bear with me. So I did this work with Louis Nelson from University of Texas. We presented this at Higher Education Data Warehouse Forum in the United States. And so we decided we compare this to a journey. So when you go on a journey, so what do you need for a successful journey? You need 1 or more travelers, right? You need a destination, a reason for the trip, an appropriate mode of transportation, and a particular pace that gets you there on time. So you have a deadline, and you decide if you walk, how do you go, when do you leave. So the goal is to get the right people to the right place at the right time. Okay? So it's the same with our DWBI system. It's also a journey. You have the travelers, you have your business leaders and users, you have a destination. You should be clear about the link to your strategy, to the long-term goals of your university. You have a reason for the trip. You should have a compelling business need. You have a mode of transportation, which is a technology, and you have a space speed, which is the processes that achieve the desired results. So, do you have that? What destination are you trying to reach and why? Do you have the right driver and passengers? Are you in the right vehicle for your needs? Are you driving at the right speed for the road conditions? So you see that these 4 things, these 4 questions are really related to the critical success factors that we classify in terms of strategy, people, technology, and processes. And we know that, well, people, technology, strategy, and processes, everything that makes us developing our project. So let's see. Do you have the right type of vehicle? Do you need a program like this, a mini car? A mini car won't take a lot of passengers. It's not good. If I want to go from here to Australia, I would not go in this car. Or do you have this? Or do you prefer a bus? Because a bus can take you longer distance, can take more people, more users, right? But you need a different license. You need some more training. You need something more skills, different skills. Well, it depends. It depends how do you choose the vehicle, how you choose your technology. It depends on how do you choose, how do I came from Lisbon to Madrid. The distance and the terrain to cover, the number of people that we need to take. How quickly do you need to get there? If if I want to go around in this campus, I could use a bicycle. Very easy, very small. It can be. But if I need something more quickly, then I need a different technology. How much money do you have? Funding. So it depends. Licensing is a problem, so maybe talk about open source or not, but see. So the best results come when you match the vehicle to your needs and your situation. Think about the small car as a data mart and the bus as your integrated data warehouse. It takes time, it's more expensive, but it's worthwhile if you have a compelling reason to build it and you have a lot of users already with this analytical culture that are ready to use it. Don't develop a bus if you only have 2 passengers. Okay? And consider it if you only need a bicycle. But use something. There are many kinds of bicycles, okay? Use something. So there are essential parts of a vehicle. And the question is, we all drive, I think, here. When we enter the car, do we really wonder if all the components are there? We just ignition, and there we go. Why, when we start a BI project, we don't care about the components? It will work. People will use it. It's not the same. It's not going to work. So it's a car. So each part plays an important role in the safety, reliability, and comfort of the vehicle. So the same in a BI program. So I will promise to write a whole chapter about this with this metaphor, because I think it's very useful, because I didn't have a lot of time. So I just put it here, and then you can see about this. We identify 20 components that are really important. You need a business leader, you need the users, you need the sponsor, more than one. Do you have only one car key? No. So you need an executive sponsorship, you need a team, well-trained, you need a communication plan, you need strategic goals, you need business needs, you need to determine the business value of your data, you need funding, but you don't need a lot of things. Look at the car. You can go and add fuel. You don't need to. You can just build, show results, and then ask for more funding. We have technology-related critical success factors: the architecture, the technology, the user interface, the BI tools, and data visualization. And we have the process-related critical success factors. It's underlined the things that really are so important to make it work: program project management, continual processes, data quality, use and access policies, data stewardship and management, linking to data governance, data quality, collaboration, established procedures, complex projects. It's in terms of the number of outcomes, really outcomes, number of production systems developed and in use. So, do you want to see a very, very, very agile maturity model? Okay. Look at the car. Okay. So you have a car. You have built your data mart. You have a car, but it's parked. Nobody uses. Are you going anywhere? No. Okay? You're not going anywhere. Why do you want to shift? Well, we want to walk, right? Because you can't answer simple questions. So you start driving on isolated roads. You create your data mart to answer specific questions, and you are very happy because you have the questions that you need. The functional users are okay. Perfect. Why shift? Because if you ask different drivers, they have different answers. So you have different answers for the same question. So what you need is what we call the navigate and stop and go traffic. You need to bring together data from several function areas in a warehouse, but some areas remain siloed. And yeah, traffic and stop and go traffic can sometimes be like this. So what you want is, why shift? You actually need answers that come from more than just one area. And then you really need this as an interconnected, single, integrated repository, and then you can really speed. It's the highway. So, concluding, what's next for you? Well, I believe that you have to start your journey and speed away. I mean, that's the thing. If you have, I think you need to take this self-assessment and really see if you clearly have something, but what you have, I don't know. But you have something. Analyze what you have, okay? And one of the things that we are now proposing is that at the UNIS BI Task Force, we are running again the survey this year. And we will start it by the end of May. And it will run until the summer, before the summer. Because very quickly, because what we've done is done a lot of local events, try to raise the awareness. So if you understand now, and I think you understand now the concepts and the meaning of the questions, the answers will be more the reality. And so we really need your participation and look at it as a self-assessment so that you can improve your own development in our institution. And I just, two words of advice. Training and communication is really, really something that you should consider in terms of your academic stakeholders. Not only you attending these events are great, but also disseminate these definitions and what we mean by this. It's also very important to have formal workshops of training in your institutions. Talk to your faculty members who are teaching data warehouse and teaching BI or something. I did the same in my university. Some key areas that you need training, and we can discuss how we can collaborate this in terms of European level in different countries, are, for instance, data governance, development methodologies, program project management. Specifically, those topics related to the process-related critical success factors, those are critical, so the things go well. And these kind of events are amazing to spread the word. And again, thanks again for Critic for inviting me to come here. Thank you.